Malcolm Hoenlein is with us, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. We call this the weekly update. Mr. Hoenlein is back on this side of the world for this morning's weekly update. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM in the AM.
Thank you. I wish I could say it's great to be back when it was so great to be there. And the Shabbatot and weekdays when it was 40 degrees, 50 degrees, even 60 degrees warmer in Jerusalem than it was in New York, even warmer than by many degrees than Orlando. And so anybody who has worries about the weather and everybody who wants to have a place to go, you go and you see the cranes are working everywhere, every city, every corner, and the demand is greater and greater as people realize that our future is there.
So they treated you well in Israel. Why'd they mistreat Tucker Carlson, Malcolm?
Because he deserves it. But listen, the story is such a lie, and it's just consistent with the lies that he tells all the time. And the fact that he was, quote, detained. Where was he? In the lounge. He was in the executive lounge, and they came to him. They didn't even make him go out online. And they didn't interrogate him. They asked him standard questions in the lounge so he would not be, quote, exposed to the public, Jewish public, I guess. And
it looked to me like the Terminal 1 lounge, not the Terminal 3 one. Am I right about that?
I don't really know where.
Yeah, you have to analyze the photos like I did.
I see that. I think they could use you in Arizona right now.
Oh yeah. I don't even start with that. What a terrible thing. But yeah, hello. This is what we expect when it comes to those who find every and any excuse to criticize Israel. Before we talk about the potential, and I know that it's so hard, as you said last week, to keep track of what the President of the United States is thinking and wants to do and is thinking of doing and actually will do. And we'll talk all about that. Obviously, Iran is a big piece of it. But what did you think of and you were just in Israel. Obviously, you've spoken to some government officials there. And I know the media had a tremendous run with this story over in Israel. What did you think of the President of the United States calling the President of Israel, I don't know if he called him or his behavior regarding the lack of a pardon for Netanyahu, disgraceful? Tell us what you know about the reaction there, and what do you think in general of a description like that by the President of the United States?
Well, I could tell you that the people's reactions, even Americans that I ran into, even some American political leaders, were taken aback by the comment. And I certainly think that the president was, and I saw him afterwards. I did not ask him about it because there were other important things to talk about. And it's sort of humiliating for both. And the president is given to making these kind of comments. It seemed to be off the cuff. Then the press, of course, starts raising the questions. Did Netanyahu ask him to do it? And there's no evidence that was the case. I think the president has said it before. He's reiterating the fact that, and the process that's required in Israel doesn't allow the president just to make a decision and dictate a pardon. So the reaction was, people were surprised. Some people felt it was inappropriate.
Yeah. The word disgraceful is,
Yes, and that goes overboard. He could have, if he wanted to mention it, there are other ways that he could have done it.
Do you think it helped the effort to get him a pardon, or it hurt the effort to get him a pardon?
I certainly think it does not help because it draws the line in the sand more, and it makes people, come out on one side or the other. I think it would be good if we got over this process. And, Prime Minister spends several days a week in court. And in fact, when we were setting a meeting, he asked me to come to the courthouse because that's where you can hold meetings on Wednesdays.
Oh my God!
I did not go. And then But the process is very demanding on him. Justice should be served. I mean, there's nobody's above justice. But I think in this case, given the nature of the charges and stuff, the serious consideration should be given to a way to come to a conclusion. He made the formal request for a pardon that they said was required. And, whether that implies an admission of guilt or not, I guess the lawyers and judiciary will debate. But I think, given all the divisions in Israel, and this is really a serious issue, and we talk about Achdut all the time, the unity, which is really essential to face the outside world and the challenges that Israel confronts. And it's more than one. Iran is the dominant theme right now. But there are many more. You see the changes in Syria, Iraq, around all around Israel that we'll talk about, I'm sure. We need to have internal unity. And the fact that we project an image of divisiveness is what encouraged October 7th, because they felt that Israel was not prepared and was not unified to respond. They look at the demonstrations not as a reflection of a democracy where people have a say and people have the right to give expression to it, but as a sign of weakness.
With that in mind, unfortunately, I have to ask you, what was your reaction to the B'nai Barak episode?
I think it was disgraceful and inexcusable. And the fact that many religious leaders and leaders of religious parties came out and condemned it. And many Rosh Yeshiva leaders of yeshivas and communities have told people not to go to these demonstrations because they seem to be hotheads and irresponsible. You can have a cause. There's ways that you can demonstrate responsibly. When you block the entrances to the city, you block ambulances, you block other important abilities that people have to transit, let alone the anger and the cost that's entailed with these demonstrations. And it's not just by them, by others as well. So the right to demonstrate and the right to express concern is legitimate. You got to decide how to do it and what the consequences of your actions are.
Yeah, no question about that. So it's interesting. Last week, and really for the last couple of weeks, we've discussed again, the president has a way of issuing these veiled threats, some of which become unveiled, et cetera, et cetera. And we were basically talking about the possibility of this all being a bluff, right? The military presence and the big buildup in the Middle East and everything that he's sending from the United States. It could be a bluff to pressure Iran, or obviously it could be, preparation for a full military action. Now it seems there's a hybrid out there because people are talking about an initial limited military strike by the United States to at least discourage, to at least encourage Iran to get back to a more serious position at the bargaining table. Of the three possibilities, is that now the most likely one?
I think all three are partially likely. I think first of all, you don't invest the kind of to have the kind of buildup that we're seeing in the Middle East. I don't know that there's been an armada like that in certainly many decades, and the cost is astronomical to bring two aircraft carrier groups, which is many ships beyond just the aircraft carrier. The fact that we have dozens, if not hundreds, of planes and other resources in the area, the disgraceful decision of Britain yesterday to say that the U.S. can't fly from Diego Garcia, the base in Diego Garcia, which is really critical, and other bases, and the United States and President Trump retaliated appropriately. I mean, to deny an ally in a war against somebody that threatens Britain and all of Europe as much as they threaten the United States. And their ballistic missiles certainly the current ones come in range of most of Europe, let alone the nefarious activities that they're engaged in Europe. And you see the spineless and gutless Europeans, and in this case, Britain first, but France, all of them, and the fact that many of them didn't participate yesterday or in the overall effort of the peace board raises a lot of questions, which will be dealt with later. So the three scenarios you cited, I think any one of them is possible. If It depends on who emerges as dominant in Iran. Also, you see the defiant statements of the supreme leader regarding the ballistic missiles, even regarding levels of enrichment. We don't know if it's grandstanding. We don't know if it's posturing, but if it's in fact the resistant position, then the president could be waiting. I don't think they're going to wait till mid-March for the third aircraft carrier to get there. They don't need that additional power, I think, to be able to strike. You saw the special planes that are used for coordination and electronic surveillance fly from England to the Middle East. So the buildup is there. I don't think you can sustain it indefinitely. You need the ships elsewhere, and the people of Iran are anxiously waiting to see what happens. As you know, today is the 40th day of mourning, which is the special commemoration in Islamic tradition. And people tried to go out into the streets. They were arrested. People were beaten. They were threatened. They couldn't even lay flowers at the graves of their loved ones. They couldn't take pictures. The crackdown and the severity of the situation is sustained. So you got to look at the words. You got to look at what actions they're taking. The capacity that Iran has today, it's a suicide mission for them against the overwhelming force that's there in the region, American force. And America may take the lead, not Israel this time, although Israel will have to play a role. And I think the strikes in Lebanon yesterday against Hezbollah, stockpiling and weapons deployment places, is a preparation, because Hezbollah has said that they would join this time if Iran and the United States get into it, and Israel, that they would enter the fray. So this, I think, was a preemptive strike, as well as part of the ongoing effort to have them live up to the agreements that they sign and be disarmed.
Well, you just answered a question which you don't normally like to answer, because one of the things you don't like to do, understandably so, is make predictions. But it sounds like you're saying if there's this type of presence already, if there's this type of a presence in the Middle East of the American military, I don't want to say you'd bet your bottom dollar, but it sounds like the likelihood is that they're going to attack. I mean, again, I know you don't like to predict, and I know that there's three possibilities here, and we would like to think that each one has some equal value. But it sounds like, from what you're saying, that there's no way they would take this type of action to this extent and not actually attack Iran.
Well, the president is driven by the art of the deal, and he knows the maximum pressure is the only way to produce a result. I think he also knows that the Iranians are unlikely to do anything that will publicly project them as the weaker party, and also they look at the dynamics in the region, and there are a lot of changes that people don't know, and potential threats. You look at the Iraqi border, the border of Iraq and Iran, and you see the Iranians, Iraq and Syria, and you see the buildup of pro-Iranian militias in Iraq on the borders. And you see that the possibility of Maliki being elected as the next leader of Iraq, despite the fact that the United States threatened him and said that it would be unacceptable, which is true. And you see the changes where the United States is announcing that we're going to pull out the troops, but it's over a year. We have 1,000 troops in Syria. That's all. But their symbolic presence is very vital. Whether they'll be replaced with a increased diplomatic presence or not, but certainly for the Kurds and the Druze and all of those people, this is a very worrisome development as well. And you see this is not particularly pressure on Israel, because they're not the U.S. troops aren't near Israel. But it could certainly shift the balance when we're moving from our support from the SDF, which was the Kurdish-backed groups, towards the Shara, and really emboldening him in Syria, and saying, that he keep praising what a great job, when we see that the Islamization process. The persecution of the minorities, including Kurds and Druze, continues. And as the Druze leaders told me just again this week, we're only alive because of Israel. And the Kurds are further away. And you see that the efforts to bring them under the government forces. And so I'm saying there's so many factors that you have to take into account that you look at Turkey and Turkey's role. It's a huge power. And Turkey becomes part of the Charm Offensive. And they're talking about putting troops. By the way, this came out late last night, that Israel has said they would not accept Turkey or Qatari troops inside. And now Turkey is supposed to be saying that they're going to put forces as well, which is putting the fox in the chicken coop. And Turkey, is a major power, and where they could easily hit Israel as well. So we have to look at what's happening on all fronts in order to understand the balance of power and the situations that we'll face in any option. I spoke to a lot of Iranians. They are wary, but all of them want action because they just can't take it anymore under this regime.
It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio around the world, the web at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, the beloved NSN app. Reminder, our fundraiser finally ends a week from today, and those of you who have not yet had an opportunity to give something in order to keep JM and the AM and the Nachum Segal Network going, which has been a tradition for 43 years, I'm proud to say. Here's your opportunity, fjbunity.org, fjbunity.org. And again, a week from today at 9 a.m., we will conclude our annual campaign. And we'd like to get to our goal, fjbunity.org. By the way, there's one other factor. When it comes to all of this. I thought there was an unwritten rule, and for some reason, maybe it only applied to Israel and didn't apply to others like the United States. I thought there was an unwritten rule that you don't attack Muslim countries during Ramadan.
You're absolutely right. That's a very good point. And Ramadan began this week, as you know. It's always connected to Rosh Chodesh, so we know sometimes before them when Ramadan's going to begin. But but you're absolutely right. There was in the past that understanding. And then people said to me this week, but Iran's not a Muslim country. I said, it's not a Muslim country. That they're Shiite Muslims, and they the same protection policy would apply to them. But that's a very good question, and I've not heard an answer to it.
And I guess the attack would be toward the end of the day when everyone's fasting and they're at their weakest.
Well, no, I don't know that they go that far. It also depends if Iran does it, but I understood the humor there.
I'm hilarious.
But they also have to worry about Purim, so, they don't want to...
It's odd. It's odd.
And everybody will think it's a Purim joke,
It's odd there, Malcolm. I've turned on my hilarity button. I've switched it on. Yeah, it's one of the first things I thought of, and then again, those of you who are paying even more attention to the calendar than Malcolm and I are doing, those people have pointed out to me that Rosh Chodesh Nisan is March 19th, so they could, which of course would be the end of Ramadan. So they could wait till the middle of March. They could wait for that other aircraft carrier and actually take action then. But who knows? I guess it would be appropriate if it happened more around Purim time than around Pesach time. All right. So now you mentioned earlier the Board of Peace. Somebody, I think it was Lieberman, and I got to have your reaction to this. I think it was Avigdor Lieberman who said that now Netanyahu has essentially overseen the establishment of a Palestinian state. And I never thought of it like that. This Board of Peace, if in fact it's going to be the world helping to rebuild Gaza and insert some type of government authority there, what do you think of that comment? That he goes ahead and says that Netanyahu is actually endorsing a Palestinian state?
Well, it means metaphorically, but also practically, and it's something I heard from others when in Israel in discussions about the arrangements, though nobody knew exactly or knows exactly how it will function. The fact is that you're bringing in 8,000 Indonesian troops, that supposedly there's a huge base being planned inside Gaza, that the Hamas has not been disarmed yet, even though the president does stress that as it is one of the agreements, and they are not honoring it. The fact that you have 5 moderate Muslim countries sending troops, the danger there is that, because of the number of incidents and because the provocations will continue, certainly by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, trying to draw Israel into some sort of conflict or situational events that would endanger the troops that are sent in. It could jeopardize the relationships with the moderate Muslim countries that Israel approved coming in. Certainly not. The Turks are a completely different story. And you see all the money that is being poured in. UAE $1.2 billion, the Saudis $1 billion, US $5 billion or $10 billion over the period, and $7 billion from other countries. They have not disarmed Hamas. Whether these troops would be willing to confront them is very dubious. They have not generally in the past. They're more of a police force. The Egyptians and others are training the Palestinian police force. One of the things that people pointed out, the Arabs pointed out to me, is that there are no Palestinians at the table when you had the border peace, etc. Israel was there, the foreign minister of Israel, who gave a great speech at the UN as well this week, directly challenging Great Britain and others for their hypocrisy and their behavior. So it's a gamble. And I don't think people thought it would get as far as it did with the turnout of 45 countries endorsing it. Many European countries did not, and their absence obviously is pointed to as well. The Egyptians training the police, some people say, is a very mixed situation as well. What isn't told is the number of trucks going in every day has increased sharply, so much so that it's caused a shortage in Israel of sweets and certain other things because they're exporting all of it to Gaza. And I guess that will have to be balanced at some point as well, because Israel needs their sweets, especially with Shalach Manos coming up. So another crisis that the peace board will have to deal with. So, again, the situation in Gaza, you see every day that there are attempts to infiltrate across the border. Israeli troops have not crossed the yellow line. This is, the myths that are created about Israel. Israel responds to them coming out of the tunnels or strikes at weapons depots and other things, which are a violation of the agreement, and Israel can't afford to let these cancers grow because they will metastasize all over Gaza, and they control less than 50% of the area, and are still discovering new tunnels and working with other groups to try and uncover them and deal with them, but they all represent a challenge. And what happens then how long do you think troops will stay if they come under fire and they have to fight people emerging from tunnels that Israel paid a heavy price for as well?
The discovery this week of the tunnel, I think it was a 1 kilometer long tunnel. That's a pretty long tunnel.
That's a long, and some have been much longer. The question I kept asking officials is, how can they do it? You not know. So the answer is that there are so many. And they start in a child's bedroom in a house, and they find the entrance underneath a crib. Again, this week is not just the past. So it's easy to be armchair generals and decide that you know what's going on. We face formidable enemies. The terrorism and the assistance that they're getting, the weapons that are coming in, the money from Qatar, Turkey, and others, and the the situation to fully disarm, and they're saying now that they won't. So they're willing to challenge even the agreements before anything is started.
I know, and I don't know. What do you think the real cost is, by the way? I mean, $5 billion from the U.S., $1.5 billion here and there, but what do you think the real cost is to rebuild Gaza? It's got to be the hundreds of billions of dollars.
Look, just removing all the debris, though there's some countries that, they're taking specific responsibilities rather than contributing to the overall thing. So, that Turkey and Qatar wanted to take education, and Israel, obviously screamed, and anybody who had a brain screamed about it, because these are the guys with the most radical educational systems, fomenting online, in classrooms, everywhere, and in America, anti-Israel and anti-Semitic manifestations. So UAE, which I think is the most trusted of the partners, and giving $1.2 billion, people said that they should have education. They offered to take over the management of Gaza, and it was refused. And as you know, they're in a conflict with Saudi Arabia, which is being lost in view of all of the other challenges. But it's a very serious issue, and developments inside Saudi Arabia are serious. We see trends that are worrisome, and not moving towards the Abraham Accords, which I think is a mistake how we're handling that. But moving away, they have internal problems, and you see that they're reaching out to Turkey, Pakistan, others. So we have a lot of other situations going on in the region, which will have direct and indirect impacts. Jordan is wanting to send troops, others where there are questionable past practices, and whether they would be willing, as I said, unlikely that most of them would be willing to engage directly and disarm Hamas, unless they create their own forces with volunteers and mercenaries, which can become uncontrollable too.
Yeah, it could be a full-blown war in and of itself.
That's right.
Just to attempt to disarm Hamas could become a full-scale war. I thought when the 12 days that everyone always talks about, when the United States and Israel attacked Iran, we thought that in the aftermath of that episode, we were told that Iran is so set back now in their nuclear program, in their missile program. I think that was mentioned as well, because now all we keep hearing about is ballistic missiles, but I think it was mentioned then as well. They're set back by so many months and years that, Iran will not, be a problem for a while. And here we are a few months later in this situation here. And I'm wondering, isn't that somewhat embarrassing for the United States? That the president, the White House, made sure to make the point that we have, damaged them to the point that's going to take them years to recover. And here we are a few months later with the necessity to go in and take care of business again?
Well, we certainly set them back a lot, and the amount of destruction and the damage to both the ballistic missile and to the enrichment process is clear. But it didn't eliminate it, and we know that they're rebuilding in some places, and they're very determined. And you look at some of the weapons they've developed; they don't have an air force to speak of. But they did develop ballistic missiles and drones and other things to which they sell to Russia, by the way, for the Ukraine war. There is a capacity there, and it can't be dismissed. And the possibility that even if they have a limited number of more limited number of rockets that can hit Israel, and Israel now has the laser defense and other defense, it still could do a lot of damage. And the threat to sink a warship, let alone an aircraft carrier, which is not an easy thing to do, but missiles fired at them could also do serious damage. So it is a lot of reckoning that will have to go on about how much damage we really did. Were they able to save and salvage significant parts deep down underneath? But they certainly are not back to where they were. And you saw they put up covers over the entrances to some of these facilities, so you can't tell exactly what they're doing and whether they are covering them up or whether they are still searching to see what can be salvaged from those operations. The bottom line is Iran remains a threat.
I'm confused about what you said about the lasers, that Israel's now at a point where they could use laser defense and Iron Dome is obsolete, or we're not at that point yet?
No. First of all, they do different things, and they have different functions. It's part of the network of defense, but the biggest aspect of it is that it costs about $100,000 every time you fire the Iron Dome missiles. Each one, I mean, they're very expensive and hard to replace. There's a limited supply for the laser, which has been deployed in several parts across Israel, and it will take down lower flying missiles. And it's and at a cost of minimal cost, right. Almost nothing.
So you still need Iron Dome. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely, you need Iron Dome and Arrow. All of them. It's a combined thing. Each one it can respond at a different level of a missile attack and different size of the missiles. But it's the combined capacity is what they're relying on.
What do you think of these stories that are coming out now that Hamas and Hamas leadership wanted to make sure that Bibi stays in power before October 7th?
I have not seen any credible actions.
Well, Naftali Bennett, I don't even know if he'd call it conjecturing. I think he confirmed it, that he felt it was accurate that the effort politically was to make sure that he stays in power and that there were no call for new elections, and that Hamas was pressuring the Arab parties to do whatever they could in the Knesset to make sure he stays in power. I mean, is there anything to this?
I don't think Hamas has the capacity to determine when Israel's elections will or will not be held. I do think there will be elections this year, whether they're in June or in September. They will happen regardless. I think that they see Bibi as the strongest leader right now. So I don't know that they want to see him removed. I think they do want to stoke the divisiveness, and they are doing it. They're doing it online. They're doing it internally. They're doing it in many ways, and especially we see manifestations everywhere of the lies and distortions, trying to paint Prime Minister Netanyahu in the most devilish and extremist way. Is he subject to criticism? Of course, but that coming, and there's no shortage of it domestically. They don't need Hamas's help to sow the divisions and
right. But it's interesting to think that Hamas prefers him as the leader, because and I'm not quite sure why, frankly, unless it gives them more of an opportunity or more of an excuse, to attack Israel, to pull off, episodes like October 7th. But
they've invested so much money in demonizing him. I guess they don't want to have to start all over again, demonizing somebody else. But I would not put too much weight on that right now. It could be that they are instigating inside Israel 100%. Are they trying to manipulate the Arab populations? 100%. You see how much Iran is investing in trying to enlist spies.
And the longer Netanyahu's in power, the more angry the Arab population gets. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is right there.
And they are the crime problem within the Israeli Arab population is very severe, and they criticize the government for not doing enough. But I mean, it's really first responsibility is they themselves to police and to deal with the spiraling crime situation in their communities, and the government has to give them the resources to help do it as well. But there have been arrests. There is more attention being paid to it, but it's a serious issue.
By the way, and I know we got to wrap up, but until I read the New York Times Magazine article, I don't think I've heard of Yair Golan. And they try to paint the picture that he's actually, progressing in terms of saving the Labor Party and, making inroads for the left in Israeli politics. You speak to people in government now, and you speak to plenty of Knesset members. Is Yair Golan, is there really something to him or not?
I met with him some time ago, I think even 2 years ago. I think that they are trying to create the candidacy. I didn't see any groundswell of support for him. But the point is that everybody's looking and saying, who is the other candidate that can take it on? Bennett, of course, is a candidate, and he spoke to our group this week, and we met with him, and he seems very confident. We saw Benny Gantz and Lapid. I think they were not looking so confident. The question is, can the opposition unite? Because to united, they have more seats in the Knesset right now. Although Netanyahu, I think, always is stronger and is able to pull out the voters that not necessarily polled in the normal course of things. I think the political situation is very fraught, and sometimes a leader can be there too long. But the question here is the alternative.
Yeah, I'm just curious if Yair Golan's a serious candidate or not.
No, so look, this is the same paper that published Tom Friedman's scurrilous attack on Israel. This is the New York Times that has done this consistently, and they are trying to create an alternative candidate. But look at the polling numbers on the left. They've diminished so much. Could it be a challenge in terms of the opposition, of who's the dominant force and who's not? I didn't see it when I was in Israel, but again, I don't necessarily go around polling and we'll talk. There's so many important issues, especially Iran, to talk about. And, we have communities there. We have a lot of other issues related to it that we can't discuss publicly. But, this is it's a very complex time on every front in Israel. And while they won against the 7 countries, we're seeing renewed activity. The Houthis threatening again, the inability so far to really disarm Hezbollah or Hamas. These are all really serious issues. And when we look at the prospect of the new troops that would come into Gaza, I think people have good reason to be concerned, let alone all the internal divisions are in the region right now and the conflicts that are going on. The trust of Shara, to me, is a mystery. I don't know why we believe that he can do, and that a guy who was a supporter of ISIS, he speaks, he says the right things. But we know that the resurgence of Islamism in the areas under their control, even in Damascus, people tell me you see more women with burqas and et cetera. It is not proven. And I think we should be very careful in the steps that we take. And I think, that even some Americans engaged in this area have not played as constructive a role as they should have.
Ooh. Very good. I like that. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Shabbos. We'll speak again next week, please, God.
God willing, we will, and we should only have Simachot and Shabbat Shalom to everybody.
Amen. And continue to pray for the safety and security of our brothers and sisters in Israel as they wonder, like we do, whether the President of the United States is going to call for immediate action or even non-immediate action in Iran.